Yo, 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 grace and peace. Can you hear me? Tell me you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Grace and peace, and welcome to the Reassembling. I am your host, Jesse Walsh. With me, as always, is Raven, aka Mom. How are we doing, Mom?
We're fab.
Fabuloso. We are a Christian YouTube channel where we deconstruct our doubts and reassemble our faith. How do you like
Oh,
that
I
motto?
like it. Listen to
I
you.
like that slogan. It's very nice.
You sound
If
like you
this
know what
is
you're
your,
talking about.
I make it look like I know what I'm talking about, but I really don't.
I
If
know.
this is your first time visiting our channel and you find what we do beneficial, please consider hitting that like button, that subscribe
And
button. That'd be
subscribe.
sweetness.
Yes.
You can also find us on TikTok, Twitter, Clapper, and Twitch. Sorry, my glasses are messing up. You can find me personally at jesse.walsh.4090 and Jesse Walsh on Facebook, as well as Raven Marie Lynn
On Facebook.
on Facebook.
And that's it.
Interesting. With all those tags. We're just dying for people to follow us, aren't we?
Yes. We want to be worshipped.
Anyway, for tonight's episode, we are going to be talking about the queens in conflict, Vashti and Esther.
Yeah.
It's a great topic. I think we're almost done with the Old Testament, women of the Old Testament. It's been a great series, I believe. This is no different.
Yeah.
What are your initial thoughts on the
I've
playlist so far?
I've enjoyed it, and I hope it opens the eyes of our viewers that God is no respecter of persons, and He will use however He sees fit, whether you're a man or a woman. But unfortunately, man likes to put folks in a box. You can do this, but you can't do that. So I'm glad God is not like man.
Yeah, that's true. So let's introduce I got a lot of stuff to go over, and I know that the Spirit is going to take over as we as where the Spirit gives us utterance, if you will, with King James.
Yes.
But
King James. Yeah.
Let's go into some of the historical context of let's put these women in their historical place, because they have some great videos for you as we're going to go into the Bible and discuss amongst ourselves. But so imagine stepping into a world of immense palaces, golden thrones, and an empire that stretched from modern day India to Ethiopia.
Yeah.
This was the Persian Empire during the time of King Ahasuerus, also known as Xerxes I. So he reigned from 486 to 465 BC. It was a time of great wealth, ruthless politics, strict social structures, especially for women, of course.
Yeah.
Two key figures in this biblical book of Esther and Vashti. They navigate this world in vastly different ways. So Vashti, a Persian queen, refused the king's commands and was deposed. Esther, a young Jewish woman, found herself rising to take her place. But what did life actually look like for the women like them? What was Persian society like? How did the laws, customs, and expectations shape their stories? So let's go to the life of a Persian queen. So Vashti, for instance, she was a queen in the palace of Susa, and I have really cool archaeological footage of Susa, which is the Persian capital during the reign of Xerxes the First.
Yeah.
Persian queens were powerful but lived under the strict court protocols. Unlike modern day queens and first ladies, Persian royal women were largely confined to the palace. Ugh. Expected to live in a luxurious...
No, women should know her place. It's in the home. It's not out there in the workforce.
It's in the palace, obviously.
Yeah.
Expected to live in luxurious seclusion while influencing politics behind the scenes. The Persian court was extravagant. Archaeological discoveries in Susa confirmed that Xerxes' palace was adorned with columns reaching over 65 feet high, and you'll see how crazy these columns are. They kind of recreate it through CGI and stuff, but
that's cool.
Walls decorated with brightly painted reliefs and a throne room that could hold thousands. Wow. The wealth was unimaginable, yet Persian queens, despite their access to luxury, were not independent rulers. Their power came through their sons, their alliances, and most notably and importantly, their ability to maintain the favor of the king. Vashti, why was her refusal so significant? So in the book of Esther opens with a lavish 6-month feast. Could you imagine a 6-month feast?
I was thinking about that.
Like, that's pretty cool. Shout out to Mr. Beat the Crowd already before anybody else shows. Brother Stevie Rankins in the building. Thank you, brother.
House.
So at the climax celebration, the king orders Vashti to appear before the men at his banquet, likely in a way that compromised her royal dignity. So Vashti refuses.
Well, listen to this real quick.
No. Yeah.
Some rabbis believe that he asked her to come there naked and wear the crown.
I'm sure we're going to touch down on that road, how the rabbis understand.
I know.
Rabbis aren't infallible. We'll just say that much right now. To us, her refusal may seem reasonable, but in ancient Persia, this was an act of defiance and threatened the entire system of royal authority. The king's advisors feared that if the queen could disobey the king publicly, all wives in the empire would start defying their husbands. This was a society built on hierarchy and male dominance, and Vashti's rebellion was dangerous.
Oh boy.
Her removal was swift. The Persian court had no room for disobedient queens. No room. We have no room for that.
You listen to your master. I mean, your husband.
Yeah. Archaeological evidence from Persian administrative records confirms that Persian women, even of high rank, were expected to submit to the male authority of their households.
Of course.
The Persian king was the ultimate ruler, and even queens were not exempt from his commands. So Esther, parallel that with Esther in her world, life for women under Persian rule.
As a Jew.
Will shift, especially it will shift focus to Esther, a Jewish woman who went from being an ordinary citizen to the queen of Persia. That's pretty well in of itself,
right? Yeah.
To fully understand her story, we need to dive into what life was like for women, particularly those of lower status under Persian rule. So the Persian Empire was vast and multicultural, incorporating people from many different ethnic groups and religious traditions. While Persian royal women lived in relative seclusion, women in the general population had more diverse experiences. So marriage and family life, Persian society and patriarchal, it was patriarchal, but women had some legal rights. A Babylonian marriage contract from the Persian period found in modern Iraq shows that wives had protection from being discarded without cause. Women could inherit property, and elite women could even conduct business. What? A woman conducting business?
Well, they don't have the logic for that.
Are you kidding me? Social class determined freedom. Persian women's freedom depended on their social class. Wealthy Persian women could own land and employ workers. In contrast, lower class women, including Jewish women, had fewer rights and often worked in households, textile production, or agricultural labor. Religious freedom under Persian rule. One of the most unique aspects of Persian rule was its tolerance of different religions. I was kind of struck by that. I'm like, that makes sense. The Persian kings, including Xerxes, did not force their subjects to abandon their faiths. This is why the Jewish people, including Esther, were able to maintain their traditions even while living in foreign empire.
What does this remind you? That remind you of Daniel?
Yeah.
Right? And we had a show on Daniel. And just give me 1 second, because you know me, when I have a thought, let me get it out before I forget it. But you know, him and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they had to learn all the customs and the arts, and not once did they go, we learned this pagan stuff. They humbled themselves. They were good men, and God, you know, what did he do? He raised up Daniel. And he was respectful to these pagan kings, right? And I think sometimes today as Christians, we think, well, if they're a pagan or what, I don't have to be nice to them, or really, you know.
If they're not Christians, they're of the devil.
Right? Sorry, I just wanted to interject that.
But I was great with the last one with Gomer. We talked about, you know, promiscuous women, prostitutes. Do they not still need the gospel? It's like,
don't they still need to be loved?
Absolutely. I mean, it's bad how we in the American church, the American culture.
No. She's a hoe, so whatever.
No, you know? we have righteous rank.
But you know, I have to ask, why don't men get that same kind of treatment that are promiscuous? No, you're a stud. You're a ladies' man.
Yep, that's the culture. I know. So from orphan to queen, the Persian beauty contest. When we read about the beauty contest, really the selection of a queen. Yeah. So after Vashti's removal, a search began for a new queen. This is no ordinary royal wedding. Young women from across the empire were brought to the palace whether they want to or not, and underwent a year-long process of beautification.
Right. I was like, what are they doing to him for a year? Are you soaking in oil every day? Or
you're going to look fabulous, doll. No, you're going to look fabulous. You're going to go see the emperor. He's going to be great. I don't know why I have to use a Jewish accent, but whatever. Archaeologists have uncovered...
Woody Allen.
It's kind of my Woody Allen impersonation. Archaeologists have uncovered Persian cosmetics, perfumes, jewelry from the period, confirming that beauty and grooming were major aspects of Persian elite culture.
Wow.
Esther,
For a whole year, though? Wow.
You're going to look fabulous, Duel. You look fabulous. Esther, a Jewish girl raised by her cousin Mordecai, was taken into this selection process. Despite being a foreigner, she found favor with the king and was crowned queen. However, this did not mean she had power. Like Vashti before her, Esther was still subject to the king's authority and the rules of the Persian court. We all know that. The defining moment of Esther's story is when she risks her life to save her people. Sounds like someone interceding for someone. I don't know. There might be a theme in the New Testament with that.
No, you're going off the rails, Walt.
A little off, man. I'm not using precept upon precept. When Haman, a high-ranking official,
you're taking all my story. Okay.
Oh, am I?
Yeah, you're supposed to just do the historical stuff.
This is a historical account.
Okay.
Okay, let's go into the I will not spoil it for you. So historical archaeological evidence. So Persian palaces and their significance. Excavations at Susa, Persepolis, another Persian capital, revealed that these cities were centers of wealth and political intrigue. Mm-hmm. Esther's story takes place in Susa, where Xerxes' palaces has been uncovered. The massive stone columns, inscriptions, and even remnants of royal feasts give us a glimpse into the world she lived in. Yeah. So let's check this out. It's really cool. This is the forgotten city of, I guess until the 1800s.
Oh, really?
I would say they discovered it. Oh, I could be wrong. Maybe 100 years prior to that. Right. Can you see?
Do you see?
Let me know if you can hear it.
Yeah.
From the information on the tablets, we can deduce what materials once decorated these massive buildings.
Shout out to Mr. Ways. Sorry, I had to stop it, mate. I hope I don't butcher your name. Ways Masih. Grace and peace from Pakistan. That's awesome.
Yes, that is.
Thank you for tuning in. Okay, let's go back.
For decades, we have seen only the stone pillars and walls. But now we can recreate the halls and palaces of Persepolis in all their dazzling splendor. As we do so, we can see why Persepolis was once known as the richest city under the sun. Access to the complex was through the Gate of All Nations. Human-headed bulls announced to visitors they were entering the heart of royal Persian power. It was covered with a cedar wood roof, its doors adorned with gold fittings. At the heart of the complex was the Apadana, where King Darius received his subjects. Today, only 10 of the original columns still stand. In antiquity, 36 columns, 20 meters high, held up another massive cedar wood ceiling. The walls were covered in sumptuous hangings. This enormous hall could accommodate 10,000 people.
Something that was built with columns 20 meters high. I think it was awe-inspiring. People were probably looking up and were completely stunned.
Yeah.
You can see how each of these columns rear up to the sky. And they would have held up there an enormous roof of beautiful cedar wood, giving us this heady scent of cedar wherever we went as well.
Wow.
King after king added to Darius's creation. Xerxes, the Greeks' great foe, built this, the remarkable Hall of 100 columns. And finally, we can recreate the private quarters of Darius himself, a place that only the king's most intimate advisors would ever have seen.
It would have been dimly lit, but light would have been streaming through window spaces. And in fact, we can tell from some of the highly polished stone around here that this would have been gleaming, absolutely gleaming. In fact, some people have called this room the Hall of Mirrors.
The building sat on a 15-meter-high man-made terrace.
In terms of beauty, it's difficult to find the right words, really. As a feature, it's an architectural symphony. Everything is built to harmonize with one another. Each building is synchronized with another one to make a beautiful, harmonized whole.
Persepolis is one of the great architectural achievements of the ancient world. But why did the Persian kings go to such lengths? Beyond housing the royal entourage, what exactly was the purpose of these extraordinary buildings?
To show off their wealth, wasn't it?
So that's just a glimpse of the vast size of this empire, and that's really
crazy.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Susa, the capital of Persia. This is where Esther would have lived.
Mm-hmm.
So peep skadoodle this one.
Wow.
What they discovered there was vast. But shows you the size of this place.
Yeah, the majesty and the power and all that.
So the stories of Vashti and Esther they're not just ancient tales.
Mm-hmm.
They are reflections of a complex world of Persian rule. So Vashti gets removed from her power structure from the empire. Yeah. And you see Esther kind of highlighting with that courageous woman coming in, but there's, that transitions into God's redemptive plan. But anyway, thought that was excellent to understand its history, put you in the shoes of where we're at.
Yeah.
That part of the world, ancient Iraq. It's basically ancient Iraq.
Helps you enter into that time.
Iran. I'm sorry, not Iraq. Iran. Mesopotamia would be Iraq. But anyways.
That was great.
Mm-hmm.
So what does the Bible have to say about these two sisters, these two queens in conflict, as you aptly stated? So it begins in Esther 1. We read about Vashti, which was the bride of King Xerxes, right? Mm-hmm. And he was ruling over the Persian Empire at the time, like you said. Yeah. And so he gives us banquet, right? And he's got all his nobles and all his officials come in, and he tells them, you can drink as much as you want, right? And this goes on for 6 months. For 6 months, he's showing them all his wealth and all his glory. I'm like, he was
kind of filling himself for 6 months, like really filling his kingdom.
Even though the Bible doesn't give us specifics of the amount of riches he had, he did have couches that were made from silver and gold. So
I don't have that. Do you have that?
No. So he throws this week-long party, right? Everyone's getting wasted, right? So that's when he says, let's go fetch Vashti. Tell her to come out here with the crown on. You're going to see how hot she is. This is my wife, right? She's my trophy wife, right? Mm-hmm. So she didn't come. What?
Nope.
She didn't come, right?
She was upset.
So this made the king angry.
Yeah, he was furious.
So he goes and consults the three wise guys, I call them. And now you got to remember the wise guys were at the party too, so maybe they were drunk. I'm saying no.
Stevie says no.
Why are you saying no?
No. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyways, so everyone's drunk. She doesn't come. So he asked the wise men, what should I do? Well, they're like, listen, we got to stop this right now, or else otherwise they're going to think they don't have to obey their husbands, but the husband has to rule over the household. I'm like, what does that remind me of? Modern day Christianity, where many Christians insist the man has to rule the house. I'm all for the man ruling with the wife. That's just how I see it.
Two rulers.
I'm sure some people don't agree with that. That's fine. But anyway, so they're going to decree this law that from now on, women have to, the gold couch, no to the gold couch, right? The silver couch. They better obey their husbands or else, right? So that was the law of the Medes and Persians. So I did a little study on the law of the Medes and Persians. What is that, right? Because it's also in the book of Daniel. What it basically is, what the king says is law and it can't be changed.
Yeah.
That's the law of the Medes and Persians. Okay. So anyway, that happens. And like you said, that she gets booted out of the kingdom. Now, some scholars believe, yes, she was booted out, but some scholars also believe she was killed, but I don't know if that's true. So
interesting.
I found that interesting, right?
Hmm.
So it says in chapter 2 that the king remembers Vashti. And I was like, did he feel bad when he did? Or because it doesn't really tell us what he's thinking about her. Was he feeling lonely? Maybe he was feeling lonely, right? So that's when the wise men are like, you need another woman. So we're going to go out and find you a woman, right? So they get all these virgins and get them all ready, right? So then Esther, that's where Esther comes onto the scene. And there was a Jew named Mordecai, which is her uncle, that raised her because she didn't have parents. And the Bible doesn't say what happened to her parents, so I'm not sure. But so anyway, so Esther gets her time to parade before the king, and he likes her best, so he chooses Esther to be his wife, right? The new queen.
Yeah.
So I thought that was awesome. Now here's cool. Another thing that happens. Mordecai overhears the plot of 2 eunuchs of the king, and they're plotting to kill the king. So Mordecai tells that to Esther, and Esther tells the king, and these 2 men were killed. Okay, so they kind of just throw that in and leave that there. I was like, well, there should be more to that, right?
So leave that in there.
So anyway, so then Haman was a man that worked for the king, and he had a plot himself, right? So he got promoted by the king, and whoever would come in his path, all the peasant people, whatever, they should bow before him to honor him, right? Well, Mordecai would not bow to him. And I found that interesting. I'm like, well, we're supposed to obey the laws of the land, right? I love the story of Esther too. But he didn't do it. So I began to think, maybe he knew something about this guy's character. The Bible doesn't say. And he was like, I ain't bowing to him, Who knows why he didn't, right? But that made Mordecai mad. I mean, that made Haman mad.
Oh yeah.
He was mad, right? So
and who's Haman's ancestor, You do the ancestry from Haman.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Haman begins to plot against not only Mordecai, but all of Mordecai's people, the Jews. Which
Grace and peace, Sheila Mahone. Sorry. Grace and peace, Sheila Mahone. Thanks for checking us out.
Yeah. So this applies to Esther too, because she's a Jew. And I find it interesting that Esther changes her name to, it was Hadass. Is that how you say her name? And that meant myrtle tree. Okay. She changed it to hide her Jewish identity.
Yeah.
That's why she changed it to Esther. Yep. So anyway, so Haman approaches the king. Listen, there's a certain people. He doesn't come out and say the Jews, right? He's like, there's a certain people that don't obey your laws
out there. Yeah.
But I think we should go after them and just destroy them all, right? So the king's like, well, sure, go for it. Do whatever you want to do, right? So he sends out the letters. The king puts his little seal on it, and that's that, right? So, so there's a deep distress among the Jews when they hear word of this. Of course, this guy's planning to get rid of all of them, right? Yeah. It's like, really deep, right? So Mordecai tells Esther, listen, you need to approach the king and appeal for the lives of your people, right? And she's like, well, you don't understand. I can't just be going in front of the king unless I'm summoned, right? Because that's a death sentence. But if he holds out the golden scepter to me, then I can approach him. So she had to make a choice. Is she willing to put her life into her hands? Because what if he says, nope, you ain't coming here, girlfriend, and she gets killed? But I do like how Mordecai's like, well, you don't know. Maybe you have been brought here for such a time as this. God has a purpose for our lives. And sometimes we don't know exactly the big picture, what we're going through at the time, right? So that was really
exactly. That's a good point.
Yeah. So Esther and Mordecai and the Jews began a fast. And I believe she asked for this fast, Esther's, that God would give her wisdom what to do. Because this is a heavy decision she has to make. This isn't light. She could be killed. But she makes the decision she's going to approach the king. And I love how she approaches this whole thing, right? He's like, well, whatever you want. The king's saying this, I'll give you half the kingdom. What do you want? She's like, well, I want to hold a banquet for you and for Haman, right?
Yeah.
So they come, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that was cool, right? So it's crazy. But at this time, Haman was still stewing that Mordecai wouldn't bow to him. So he's at home sulking and all this stuff, and his wife's like, we should just build some gallows for Mordecai and we can hang him on him. Really? That's what his wife suggested.
Isn't that crazy?
Right? That's crazy, right?
To Sheila Mahone, I actually David Wood's younger, more handsome brother. So just throwing that out there.
What?
Anyway, David Wood, he's an apologist.
That's
okay,
her.
go on.
Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry.
Esther, no, it's a inside joke, a long-going inside joke with Sakari.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then she's like, listen, I'll tell you tomorrow. I'm going to throw another banquet for you and Haman, okay?
Yeah.
So she does that, right? So before this next banquet, the king can't sleep. He's tossing and turning. He's like, bring me the Royal Chronicles. I always think of Robin Hood, Prince John.
Bring me,
I love it. Put it on all my luggage. Okay. So he asks that the record of the Chronicles be brought to him, right? And he reads about the plot of the two eunuchs that wanted to kill him, and Mordecai thwarted that plot. And so the king's like, now how was Mordecai honored? And the men that brought the Chronicles were like, nothing. We didn't do anything for him. He's like, what? What do you mean we didn't do anything, right? So I love this part. He's like, who's in the court? And they're like, oh, Haman's out there. And the king's like, well, bring him in here, right? And so the king asks him, I love this, what shall be done for the man whom the king delights to honor? Well, Haman thinks it's the king's getting ready to honor him. So he's all excited. He's like,
he was all happy.
Yeah. He's like, well, I think you should have a crown and a royal robe placed on him. Put him on horseback and parade him out the street and say, this is what is done to the man that the king honors. And so the king's like, yes, go do that for Mordecai.
Yeah, for Mordecai.
Haman's like, what?
Thus it shall be done. The king's desire is honored.
That was hilarious, right?
Yeah. So then Haman, Haman's got to honor him. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So he's all bummed. He goes home. He's sulking again, right? And his wife and his wise men, this is what they say to him. If Mordecai is a Jew, you will fall before him. You will not succeed. I was like, whoa, that's pretty deep, right? So he's
of Jewish origin.
Right when they're saying that, the king's eunuchs arrived to take Haman to Queen Esther's second banquet. Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah, the king's eunuchs arrived and hastily brought Haman.
Right. So here they are at the banquet again, right? The king again asked Esther, what is your petition? What do you want from me, right? And she begins to explain that her and her people are going to be destroyed. And when the king asks who's behind all this, the queen says, Haman, right? Oh, the king is mad. He leaves to go out to the palace garden. I'm like, he's trying to cool off, I guess, right? Haman literally throws himself at Esther, begging for his life, right? When the king comes back in, he sees Haman falling across the couch where Esther is. And he's like, oh, you're going to mess with my wife now too, right? So the eunuchs covered Haman's face, and Haman is hung on the very gallows he made for Mordecai.
And that, how the table turns. And Sheila's wondering, are you guys wondering if we're in the same room? No, I'm in Kansas. Mom is in Colorado.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys knew that. Fun little fact about us.
He used to be in Colorado. I told him that.
I used to live in Colorado, yeah.
Anyways, so then that happens, and then Esther appoints Mordecai over the house of Haman, right? And Esther approached the king again without being summoned. Again, she's right, but he allows her to come forward, right? And she again pleads for his people because those letters went out, and so he said, nope, we're going to revoke those letters, right? So it also says this. The letters were sent, and the Jews were very glad and celebrated with the feast. And many people became Jews as the fear of the Jews fell on them.
They became Jews. What? No, you can't do that.
And that celebration is where we get Purim from. Okay.
Yes.
So the king issued a decree that if the enemies of the Jews attacked them, the Jews could kill them, and they did. They killed some folks, right? Then the king asked Esther, what else did she want? Well, she wants Haman's 10 sons to be hung. Yeah. Well, that happened too, right? So the book of Esther ends with Mordecai being second to the king, and he was well received by his people, and he sought the good for his people and spoke peace to them. So I was like, what a beautiful story of
Yes.
redemption, right? I just loved it. So, but back to girlfriend Vashti. This is what I liked, right? Now, here's what's interesting, because both Vashti and Esther did not obey their husbands. Now, am I saying women shouldn't listen to their husbands? I'm not saying that, right? But I am saying there's no reason why a wife can't disagree with her husband and say, no, I don't feel right about doing that, right? But we act like, the church sometimes acts like, well, the man is the master and the wife better just come in line and listen to everything he says, right? I'm
Right.
just saying that's what's taught, right? But what I love about Vashti is when she made that decision to disobey and she was not going to be a trophy wife, I think that sent a message for future generations that women are much more than a sex object or something that's beautiful, right? Women have their own minds, right? God put those things in these women. We all have a mind, and I don't think sometimes some Christian men don't think women can logically reason, but we can. Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was interesting.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. So now what's funny though is the Jewish rabbis could not stand Vashti. They said all nasty things about her. So it's like, and like you said, a lot of people put a lot of stock into what some Jewish rabbi or some scholar said, and it's like, do we not understand that people can make mistakes? We don't interpret everything correctly all the time. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Jesus was always, rebuking the experts of the law. They had so many things wrong, right? Yeah. So that's what I loved about this story, is it showed that women were much more than just their beauty, right? So anyways, that's what I got out of it.
Yeah, that's a good story. I mean, I'm trying to keep up with Sheila and Stevie in the comments. Who's getting old? You must be having a side conversation. Who's getting old?
I'm getting old. I'm getting older too.
Yeah, it's a great story. I love how it's another way of Satan trying to attempt throughout the Old Testament on how to exterminate and eradicate the Jewish people. It's another. It's really interesting how you see Cain and Abel. You fast forward, you see Jacob and Esau, and they're at war, the brotherly war throughout the Middle East. And then Haman. Haman is a descendant of Amalek, like I was saying. Amalek's descendant of the So there's the constant camaraderie of sibling rivalry, and it's still going on to this day.
It goes back to the garden. That God's people will always be hated. The enemy is always going to come against God's people, whether it's the Jews or the church. We are hated by the enemy.
It's an attack on God's people. Just always been an attack on God's people.
Yeah.
What are some great, Chris? Piece it all together. We're doing this women's series, and it's a great series, and I think they all point to Christ. If you noticed in all these women videos we did, it always points to Christ as well. That's the totality.
There's always a what's the word I'm looking for? An intervention.
The tapestry.
That God uses people, women, to intervene for His people too.
What a woman! I love.
Yeah, can you believe it?
Yeah, I love the Huldah one we did. Have you guys in the chat? Have you seen the Huldah video we did on Huldah?
Yeah.
How it was recognized that she was the first person in Scripture to canonize the Old Testament
and interpret it.
I didn't know that.
To teach it. Yeah.
Pretty interesting detail.
And I keep saying that the way God used women in the Old Testament, and then the New Testament, we're basically told women can't do too much of anything except take care of, a husband and kids and be quiet.
Yep.
There's a disconnect there, and I blame us that we've missed some things in the New Testament.
Yeah, and blame the history of tradition.
God is not going to contradict Himself. If He's going to use women powerfully in the Old Testament, why can't He use them powerfully in the New Testament?
Shout out Reginald Wells in the building. Reginald Wells Immersion. If you guys aren't subbed to his channel, go and sub to his channel, please. Quit living under a rock. No, anyway. So the tapestry of this story, I believe, we find some really cool hidden gems in there. The rejection of Vashti and the rejection of Israel. Vashti was called by the king to display her beauty before the nations, but refused to come.
Yeah.
So it parallels Israel's rejection of their divine calling to display the glory of God to the world, and later their rejection of Christ as their king. So as Vashti is set aside, Israel as a national entity was temporarily set aside. Is that interesting?
Yeah, but I don't think I agree with that. I think
No?
Vashti was coming against her what's the word? Misogynist husband.
Right. Yeah, we can see the intertwinings of the actual text itself, but I'm saying, how does this fit to the totality of the redemptive plan of, pointing to Christ?
Yeah.
Part 2, Esther as a type of the church, the bride of Christ. After Vashti's rejection, a new bride was sought and chosen in Esther 2:17. Esther, a Gentile-raised Jewish woman, represents the church, possibly composed of both Jews and Gentiles, who is chosen to be the bride of Christ because she's not in the land. So she's raised from Gentiles. She's a Jewish woman, but you can kind of see a typology of that.
And how did she behave herself in a pagan country, just like Daniel did?
She kept the law, statutes, and commandments. She wore a dress, and
but
kept quiet.
They were humble. They were kind. They were respectful. They didn't act like, we're in this pagan country, we ain't gonna respect any of these pagans.
Right.
You know what I mean? Some people get that idea. Well, they're not Christians, so we can talk to them however we want to because they're lost and they're this and they're that. It's like, it's the kindness of God that leads you to repentance.
Yeah. That whole thing, yes. 3, the beautification process and sanctification. Esther underwent a year-long purification process before she could meet the king.
I still want to know what that year-long. What is she, sister getting her hair done, her nails done, her weave?
Yeah, I know. What are they doing? Are they doing seashells or something? I don't know. What are they doing? Filing their nails down on rocks. So this could symbolize the sanctification of believers as we prepare ourselves for the return of Christ. Ephesians 5:26-27, Revelation 21.
I love that.
It's interesting. For the secret identity and the mystery of the gospel, Esther initially concealed her true Jewish identity, like you mentioned, just as the mystery of Christ and the church was hidden for ages. Her revelation as a Jew at the right time mirrors how the church will be revealed in full glory at the return of Christ.
Interesting.
Interessante. Haman as a type of Antichrist. I believe that.
Haman was a big fat mess.
Haman, the enemy of the Jews, sought to destroy God's people and exalt himself in Esther 3:5-6. This foreshadows the Antichrist, who will seek to destroy the Jews and the church while exalting himself as God. Clear parallel types and shadows. I do definitely see it. Haman is a type of Antichrist.
Speaking of exalting themselves, we have to pay attention to like different Christian leaders and pastors that are constantly exalting themselves. What is that?
Yeah.
Have you seen that? It's just like, it's all about me and I, and it's like, where's Jesus in all this?
Sheila Mahone says she's already subbed to Reginald Wells. I myself am subbed to Reginald Wells.
I think I am. I'll have to double check.
I think we're all subbed, Reggie. Need some more people. Get some. Share the live. Like and share. What's he saying?
Yeah.
Something. I miss. You guys got some other side conversation going on. I wish I knew what was going on. Yeah. Anyway, the casting of lots and God's sovereign control. Haman's cast lots in Purim to decide when to destroy the Jews. This points to how the ultimate battle between Christ and the Antichrist is already foreordained.
Yeah.
God is in control of time. I can agree with that one. 7, Mordecai's exaltation and Christ's victory over evil. So Mordecai, who was despised, was eventually exalted to second in command. This typifies Christ's exaltation after his rejection, where he is crowned King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm good with that one. Number 8, Esther's intercession and Christ's advocacy.
Yeah.
Esther risked her life to plead to her people.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing Jesus as her mediator who intercedes before. I love those. Someone in a story is always interceding for someone. If it wasn't Miriam, if it wasn't Moses on behalf of Miriam, what else?
Yeah.
There's all these intercessions. How do you not see the intercession?
Well, Miriam intervened to get baby Moses to mom to nurse.
Oh, if it wasn't for Miriam, that was the biggest one I learned from the Miriam one.
Oh boy.
What was it that she was able to continue the generations. So she takes the generation of Joseph all the way to the exile. So because of her and her able to prevent Moses from being killed, the firstborn.
And not only that, when 40 years Moses disappeared because he killed that Egyptian and Pharaoh was after him, remember? Do we really think Aaron was strengthening his people's faith? I think it was Miriam, even though the scripture doesn't tell us. But
it could be both of them, yeah.
It could be, but I highly doubt Aaron had a issue with being weak. He'll do whatever the people want just to shut him up,
9, the law of death and the new law of life. First decree by Haman was irreversible and meant death, just as the law brings death. Okay. Second decree gave the Jews the power to fight back, symbolizing the new covenant in Christ, where believers overcome sin and death. I like that.
Wow.
Okay. I like that. Number 10, the victory of the Jews and the ultimate triumph of the saints. The Jews, marked for death, defeated their enemies in Esther 9-1. They became Jews, right? This foreshadows the final triumph of Christ and his people over Satan, sin, and death.
Don't you find that interesting? How did they become Jews? Explain it, Jess.
They became Jews. They came into covenant. Anybody who comes into covenant, even in the old covenant.
Wait, they're Gentiles. I thought God hated Esau.
Well, you got to make that make sense. I mean, if you're one of our friends, how did they become Jews? It says they became Jews. How do you become a Jew? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
No, that means we're going to go off on a tangent. They're going to say, hey, it means they went to their religion. Then you prove our point for us. I think that's a good little ammo for them. But anyway.
Yeah.
11, the hanging of Haman and the defeat of Satan. Haman was hung on the very gallows he prepared for Mordecai.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Yeah, isn't this so it kind of mirrors how Satan plans to destroy Christ on the cross.
Right.
Was actually his own defeat. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
12, just a few more. The reversal of fate and the restoration of all things. Everything that was intended for evil was turned into good. Esther 9.
Yeah.
This is a picture of the new heavens and the new earth where all wrongs will be made right. Revelation 21. Okay, I see that. So we see this is interesting. 13, the establishment of Purim and the marriage supper of the Lamb. So the Jews celebrated their deliverance with the feast that was so to be observed forever.
Yeah.
This points to the marriage supper of the Lamb, where the redeemed will forever rejoice in their salvation.
I like it.
That's interesting. So 14, Vashti's pride versus Esther's humility. Satan's fall, Christ's humility. Vashti's prideful refusal to submit to the king results in her removal.
I don't think it was pride, though. That's what I'm just saying.
Vashti's prideful refusal to submit to the kings resulted in her removal. In contrast, Esther's humility led to her exaltation. This is a parallel to Satan's pride. Isaiah 14:12-15 versus Christ's humility, Philippians 2:5-11, where the first was cast down and the second was lifted up. Interessante. And last one, Esther's position in the throne room and the church's role in the kingdom. Esther had access to the king's throne room in Esther 5:2. It's symbolizing the believer's access to God through Christ, in Hebrews 4:16. So just as Esther was given authority, believers will reign with Christ in the coming kingdom. I like that. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I have a heartfelt, I don't have any videos to play, but I have a heartfelt conclusion. Do you want to hear my conclusion?
Sure.
We're all sinners in need of a savior.
Yep.
This is really good. So it's the grand tapestry. We always talk about the grand tapestry of God's divine story. It's a story woven with threads of rejection, redemption, pride and humility, exile and belonging. It is the story of Esther and Vashti, but more than that, it is the story of us all. I love how I saw myself in the story of Gomer and Hosea.
Were you Gomer or were you Hosea?
I'm Gomer, obviously. The book of Esther. Why do you say that?
I raised you better than that.
I'm Gomer. I'm Gomer.
No,
I go around saying I'm Gomer. I'm Gomer. What?
Gomer
Never mind.
Pyle. Yeah.
It's a podcast we did. They just say that on the streets. What? You're Gomer. Yeah, I'm Gomer. All right. The book of Esther opens with a feast, a kingdom reveling in it, reveling in its own glory. King Ahasuerus, drunk with power and wine, commands his queen Vashti to appear before his lords, to be paraded, to be displayed, to prove her worth by the world's standards. But Vashti refuses. She resists the king's command, and in doing so, she is cast out, deposed, and stripped of her royal standing. She vanishes from the pages of history, A cautionary tale of a queen removed. Okay. And then in her place enters Esther, a woman of no renown, an orphan in a foreign land, a girl whose beauty was not sought after in the courts of Israel, but in the palaces of Persia. She is taken, adorned, and set before the king, an unlikely choice for a throne she never asked for. And yet, it is Esther whom God calls. It is Esther whom God uses. How does this story fit into the gospel, you say? Beloved, in Vashti, we see a picture of Israel, called, chosen, and yet through disobedience cast away for a time. A Jewish people, though beloved by God, were scattered among the nations, awaiting the day of their redemption. And in Esther, we see the mystery of the gospel revealed. A new bride is brought forth, not replacing the first, but fulfilling a purpose unknown to the first. Esther is chosen, adorned, and seated in a place of honor, not for her sake alone, but for the salvation of her people. Do you see the gospel in this? I know I do. The Gentiles, once strangers to the covenant, have been brought near. Esther, a hidden Jew, was placed in the palace of a pagan king for one reason: to stand in the gap, to intercede, to plead for mercy when death threatened to destroy her people. So Christ came not in a palace, but in lowliness, to stand in our place, to intercede, to plead for mercy when death threatened to destroy us all. And just as Esther said, if I perish, I perish. Jesus went before the King of Kings, knowing that he would perish, and yet he laid down his life so we might live. It's the beauty of the gospel hidden in the book of Esther. It's not just a story of a Jewish queen, nor merely a historical event. It's a picture of the redemptive plan of God, the story of how he calls the unworthy, the forgotten, the foreigner, and makes them his own. The story of how he uses one life, one moment of courage to change the course of history. And that really changed the course of history, especially for the Jewish people.
Yeah.
The story of how both the Jew and the Gentile have a place in his kingdom, not by merit, but by his own divine grace. Esther was not placed in the palace by accident. And you, dear brothers and sisters, you, we're not where we are by accident either. You have been called into the kingdom for such a time as this. You too have been brought near by the blood and by the one who intercedes on our behalf, our great Esther, our greater Esther, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So let us stand in awe of his sovereign plan. Let us rejoice in the beauty of his providence. Let us live bodily in the knowledge that we, like Esther, have been placed where we are. It's not for our own sake, but for the sake of the kingdom.
Yeah.
So I love the tapestry. I love when they connect and all the books connect.
Well, I think we need to give a big shout out to Mordecai as well, because, he did a very noble thing by raising Esther after her parents were gone. And I think just those little decisions we make, and we've talked about this before, they might just seem like a simple decision, but yet God sees those things we do. Those things that we're trying to make right choices and right decisions and noble things that we set our mind on to do. God sees that, right? We don't know what that, the future holds with those decisions, but God is a rewarder to those who diligently seek him. My Bible says so. I can look at myself when I made the decision to get the boys. Was an easy decision. It's not easy to do, on my own, but God has been there. He's been our provider. And I'm just so thankful to the Lord that he meets our needs,
Yes.
But I want to just talk about Vashti's name too. We really didn't get into that. But her name means beautiful or goodness. Right. And I thought that was interesting. And then Esther's name from Hadassah means myrtle tree, which means rebirth and protection and renewal.
Wow.
So the moral of the story is
wow.
God uses only hot women.
He only uses hot chicks. That's the moral of this. Yeah, that's the lesson there. Did you guys know that? After all that deep study, I didn't know that. It was God only uses hot chicks.
So ugly ladies. Anyways, there was
so
just
shallow.
so much in this story. I loved it.
Yeah, there's a lot.
It's just, God is so good. I mean, he was going to use a pagan woman, Vashti, and he did use her, and I believe he used her. In her rebellion, it might look wrong to some people, but I think she made a stand that women are more than an object of beauty, a trophy wife. We are much more than that. And, her name meant goodness, too. So there was some goodness in there. And then, I find this interesting because when Daniel was in captivity, it was the eunuch, I believe, that changed their names. But in this story, Esther changed her name to a Persian name. So I found that interesting, too.
I'm gonna have to look into that. See what the scholars
Yeah.
say on that one. That's
That's
interesting.
interesting, right?
Yeah, every little
Yeah.
detail, all the little
Right.
details are there's a significance to it. But I love how it's just the Jewish people have God's always had a plan for the Jewish people, even though Satan himself,
Always coming
through
after
working
'em.
with people, has tried to exterminate, eradicate them out of lands, expel
Yeah.
them. Notice how they come right back,
Well, it's just
despite
being,
their faithfulness. You know, we've went through many different podcasts. Despite their faithfulness, He brings them back.
yeah. Well, and it also reminded me of James, that God
She was-
resists the proud and He gives grace to the humble. Haman's
Exactly.
always trying
Only
to
cougars.
lift himself up, right?
Yeah,
And
she just says
more,
cougars. They only use cougars. God only uses cougars.
I love it. But you know what I mean? So you see, Haman was just this dude that was all I want to be worshipped. Okay, don't
Hates
tell
the
me
Jewish
I
people.
can't be. It's like, dude, settle down, right? And he's
Mhm.
sulking, and then his wife's like, well, let's build some gallows and kill those folks.
Yeah, he got him
What?
convinced too. He got the king convinced.
Well,
Yeah.
he
yeah.
didn't even come out and say, well, by the way, your wife is one of these people. And he's like, there's a certain people, wink,
Yeah, there's
wink, you know. He doesn't even say who
certain
they are.
people.
So he's very deceptive too, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a great story.
it is.
We are not done yet with the Old
We have
Testament.
one more.
We're going to speak on Deborah. You guys want a preview of the thumbnail? I think this is so cool.
I love Deborah.
I'm going to show you guys a preview of the new thumbnail. This will be the last book of the Old Testament that we're going to talk women in the Bible, and we're going to heading into the New Testament.
Women
So
New Testament.
check this thumbnail out. So, fearless judge.
Love it.
Judge of Israel. She was a judge of Israel.
See, she's hot too.
How cool is that? How cool is that thumbnail?
That's cool. You are the man.
Anyway, shout out to all the subscribers, everybody watching us. It's always a pleasure. I like when anybody watches us. I think it's fun. It's fun what we do. We don't do it for money.
Attention or having your own conversation?
Take your notes. We're gonna be quizzed at the end.
Yeah.
But anyway, announcement to everybody that's watching. Once we get monetized, we want to try to go into a donations, because at the end of every show coming up, once we get monetized, we want to give out a prize. I'm thinking like a gift card or something would be great. But it's Bible trivia, so we're gonna implement some Bible trivia towards the end.
Yeah.
If you guys get the correct answer, you get a point. We'll see who wins at the end of the episode, and winner takes a gift card. I think that'd be cool. We want our way of giving back, really.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's what I'm looking forward to.
Plus, I think it'd be fun, right?
Yes,
Sometimes we get into such heavy subjects, and it's like, oh boy, we need to lighten the load sometimes, right?
I think everybody deserves it. You know, people that watch us, it's like, hey, what am I getting out of this? If you're not getting anything out of this, let us give you an Amazon card. You can order a book that you want, whatever, because you answered some Bible trivia. That's a good way to give back, you know.
Or even just a Visa, and they can shop wherever they want.
Go do it. Do what you please. Yes, absolutely. But anyways,
we're gonna pay you to follow us.
Yeah, pay us. Pay you to pay us to pay. Yeah. So shout out to Stevie Rankins, Mr. Waiz, my C, I think it is, all the way from Pakistan.
That's awesome.
I'm so humbled that we're gentlemen out there in Pakistan watching us. Of course, Sheila Mahone. Of course,
yes.
Brother Reginald Wells, and a couple people on TikTok. If you're on TikTok and watching me, I can't see the comments, so thanks for. They're it's kind of weird. They come and they go as in the lives. It's hard to monitor who's watching.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But anyway, so that's what's coming up in the future. Do you have anything else before we head out?
I don't think so. I really thought this was a powerful story, adding Vashti to it, because, like I said, most rabbis can't stand Vashti. How dare she rebel against her husband? It's like, I think I told you years ago when I was a baby Christian, I went to a women's Bible study and we were studying Esther.
Yeah.
And we read the little chapter about Vashti, and I was the only one in that study that said, I like what she did. Everyone's like, else is like, oh no, she disobeyed her husband. I'm like, really? That's how you see it? So I was the only one. Wow. I'm the cheese that stands alone all the time, but that's okay.
Wow. Is that an essential? I mean, is that really an essential? Come on. It's just okay.
Obviously, it is.
Yeah, to some traditions, it is an essential thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, grace and peace. Shout out to everybody who came out. Follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Twitch, Jesse.Walsh.4090 on Instagram, Jesse Walsh on Facebook, Raven Marie Lynn.
Facebook.
right? Is it Raven
Yep.
Lynn Marie? Raven Marie Lynn.
Raven Marie Lynn. You
Raven
don't
Marie
know
Lynn,
your
duh.
mother's name.
Anyway, and then anything else you got to put out there? That's all.
Nope,
That's all.
just-
That's all the tags.
We're just excited. And like we said, we are going to touch on the Talmud soon because that needs to be discussed.
Talmud. It's gonna be an interesting one. Interesting.
We don't necessarily have to go too deep, but I think a
we're
lot
going
of
deep.
people equate that almost equal to scripture. I'm like,
Well, you got some Gentiles out there who saying church fathers are infallible as well. So it's just human nature.
I don't pay attention to the church fathers really.
There's some good church fathers. There's some psychopathic church fathers. But anyway.
Yeah, and not every church father got everything right. So
actually, every church father didn't get everything right.
Right, but it's like you said, some people are like, "How dare you speak against whoever?"
Aquinas,
and it's like
Aquinas says, "Nuh-uh,
or
nuh-uh."
Calvin said that.
Aquinas says, "Yeah,
it's like, come on."
It's not what Luther.
It goes back to the whole. Some are following Paul, some are following Apollos.
Are you a transubstantiation or consubstantiation? Tell me now. If not, then we can go our separate ways.
I'm a constipated.
Constipated. That's what I say.
Yeah.
I agree. I disagree with both. But anyway, all right. We will catch y'all in the next one.
God bless.
God bless.